for the public portion of the Committee of the Whole meeting of the Holmdel Township Board of Education, July 24th. We will get the meeting going. We're going to return to public session. May we have a motion, please?
Move.
Second? Roll call, please.
Mr. Wall,
Yes.
Mr. Damari.
Yes.
I'm like, did you leave?
I'm here.
Mr. Reddy's absent. Dr. Kalor. I don't know if she's online. Nope. Mrs. DeSillo,
Here.
Mr. Buckley,
Yes.
Mr. Mann, Mr. LeBecchi.
Yes.
Ms. LaPresti.
Yes.
We have a quorum.
Thank you very much. Welcome, board members, administration, and members of the public, whether online or present. We're going to call the meeting to order. Meetings of the board are open to the public, and all members of the community should feel free to participate. There's one opportunity for the public to speak. Anyone who would like to speak, please give your name, address, and group, if any, that you're representing. The presentation should be as brief as possible, but no more than 3 minutes if possible. If it has to go over a little bit, we understand. There are certain matters that may be brought before the board that cannot be immediately addressed in public. Such matters may be referred by the president to a board committee and/or the superintendent for consideration of resolution. The board vested in the president or other presiding officer authority to terminate remarks of any individual if they deem it in the best interest of those present to do so, which we don't expect that to happen. May we please stand for the flag salute? Thank you. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. For administration, any presentations, public hearings?
No, sir.
All right, there are none on, as far as, let's go to action items. I don't believe we have action items this evening,
No
correct?
action items.
Okay, wonderful. Board of Education liaison reports. Any liaison reports that members would like to put forth in the record now? Hearing none. Any board subcommittee reports that you'd like to put on the record now? Thank you. We're going to move to old business. First item is, actually, you know what? I'll add, if you don't mind, we've been talking a little bit about public relations and wanted to have the superintendent talk about some of the work that he's been doing, but also the chair of our community relations, which is board member LeBecchi, and some of his thoughts on public relations. And ultimately, after the thought process is to get that topic to the committee to take a look at some of the proposals that may be available. So perhaps the board can consider moving forward with the public relations agreement. So maybe we could start with Dr. Cascone and Chair LeBecchi, jump in when you feel it's appropriate, and then we'll take care of that matter.
Thank you, Mr. Wall. Yeah, so number of months back, I believe actually, President Wall, I believe it was you had sort of put this idea of a public relations firm back on sort of our agenda, if you will. You know, the board had previously contracted with a company to do that, and last year we did not. So I reached out and engaged with, had interviews with several potential partners. And as I was sort of considering next steps, I thought that it would be important to involve, you know, at least a committee of the board in having follow-up sessions with those firms, as well as any other ones which might be brought forward, and sort of vet them in that manner through the committee structure, and then move forward a recommendation to the full board. So I have made those connections with those 3 firms. They're sort of just lying in wait, if you will, until I get back to them and set up opportunities to meet. So we're good to go. Just a matter of, you know, when Chairman LeBecchi wants to kind of get cracking on the work.
I think Chair LeBecchi, you had some outreach as well, so you want to pick it up from this point?
Yeah, same here. I actually contacted a couple firms on behalf of the board that I will send over the RFPs to you to disseminate to the board, and they could review them as well. And then you and I could probably get together on another day just to discuss, you know, how we want to proceed with regards to just vetting these new companies. You know, I think it's just really important. I think that we all have to realize that, you know, email's not the most effective way of communication. You know, we all get 1 billion of them a day, and we really need to have a professional be able to help us disseminate what information should be going out, also how it should be going out. There's multi-levels of communication, communication platforms, not just social media, but different ways. Like there's amazing things that we do in this school that not just the town should know about as well. So we should be putting that out there in whatever publications we can to get that accreditation from other people, getting other people to start noticing us. And I think, you know, we'd be doing ourselves a disservice if we did not do that. So it's just really important that we get the right company in place to be able to get our message across in the right way, but with the emphasis on the articulating our messages internally to our stakeholders, right? So they know what's going on. There's no, oh, I didn't know that happened, or why is this happening at the last hour, and so on. So there's different levels of ways that people can learn about what we're doing, why we're doing it. So I think it's just something that we need to really get on top of. So maybe January 1st, we can start and get this going and have good communication.
I think even, now that you're like that you said that, how, you know, sometimes Dr. Cascone, you put out like a text message when it's getting pushed out via text message, even like your update that you email, like put out a link on the phone, you know, like via the text messages, could, you know, just a thought. I definitely read more from my text messages than I do. I get
Agreed.
lost in my emails.
Yeah, so that's certainly a great way to communicate. In my business, we actually prefer that communication method when dealing with companies and large amounts of employees, because we know that they don't read their emails, right? We know that they don't go check the website and look for, you know, something within their website that they can't even find, and they get frustrated. But when it's sent directly to you, that's just one method, right? But I think the goal would be to find a company that could really map that out for us and what we're looking to do and exactly how to do it and help implement it. So.
Thank you very much. Any other board members have any comments or thoughts on that? We'll have that referred back to Community Relations Committee.
I'll just say I appreciate the efforts. And also you mentioned the website, because I was going to recommend possibly a section on the homedaleschools.org page. And I know I made a comment too, and I don't know if this is something we'd want to consider, but when certain instances happen in the school where we're getting multiple people asking the same question, if there was some sort of a
FAQ.
frequently asked question page that provided the answer, that community members, you know, like with the whole grading thing, instead of having to provide the same response to multiple people and people be asking around, and a lot gets miscommunicated. So if there was and look, I don't know if this is something we should do or not. It was just an idea to throw it out there. I don't know if there was something similar where the board would be able to utilize our page on the Homedale Schools to kind of put out there, convey what we've been accomplishing. And then the other piece of the communication effort, which I think is important for people who want to pay attention, because we talked about the whole survey thing. If we move forward with that, it would just be nice for the community to better understand the definition of what we really do. Because I think people, you know, when things happen in the school, a lot of times, you know, good or bad, sometimes we take a lot of heat for something that, you know, we're really not in that decision-making process. And I think people really misunderstand what our role is here. So I think that could be something that we can also continue to convey. But I like that Anthony's on it. I think the better the communication efforts, the better environment we can create.
Thank you very much. Good. Okay. Next item is a board retreat and goal setting parameters. Dr. Cascone, would you like to pick that one up?
Sure. So every year the district engages in a process of goal setting. Next week we'll be engaging in a session with one of our administrative roundtables and just developing some draft goals. The intention would then be to share those with the board for your feedback. Is there anything from your perspective that should be on the district's docket as far as goals that's not represented there? And that's an opportunity as the board to kind of weigh in and provide input on what administratively should be our priorities. Board goals are a bit different, right? It is recommended that boards set goals annually. It's not required. Something the board may want to consider. And I think, you know, you said something, Vice President Damari, about, you know, wish that the public had a better understanding of what the board actually does. Well, that in of itself could be a board goal, right? Just in terms of whether it's creating some form of a quarterly communication from the Board of Education, creating, again, like working with the administration, create an FAQ page on board's role. So that's a good example of something that falls definitely under the board's purview that you could set as a goal. We know that we're going to be doing a conversion. We're going to continue, we're going to have a policy manual that's converted, and there's policy work to be done, right? So if there's specific policy focuses, something that falls directly under the purview of the board that could be translated into a board goal. So my thought would be, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a retreat for this purpose, I thought perhaps we could use the August committee of the whole and have a portion of that meeting designated for a public conversation of the board around goals and the extent to which you want to set them, what you think they should be. Whether we want to weave that into a retreat, is something for the board to consider.
Thank you. And the reason I asked to have this listed is also, I know Board Member DeSillo was talking about the retreat issue. Many districts throughout the state regurgitate goals like a dartboard, just throw it against a wall, see what sticks, and they've checked the box. It's just reality from what I've seen in other districts. Part of the challenge is, do you want to have goals as an exercise? You don't want to actually have goals. But then the question would be, what is a goal? For example, if it has to do with a software program, that's not a goal, that's a task, right? So it's defining what is a goal. And they used to be tied to also merit pay for administrative staff in certain respects, superintendent contracts and things of that nature. So you find in prior years, the work just gearing towards completing that task to get the bump. It's usually 15,000 or something along those lines, 5,000, 5,000, the 3 goals, $5,000 a piece, check, check, check. And so it just becomes, it's not genuine. It would be my opinion, it wasn't genuine at all. So we jettisoned that. So that's not in the contracts anymore, just to be clear. So are we setting goals? If it's a task, just make it a task. And you can do many of these things in a week or a day or a month. But what is an actual goal? So that's one thing, is what's the working definition? Because 9 members may have different thought process on what that is. And the other challenge is, and I'll finish, is that goals are set as a moment in time. So you have a list, 3 goals and 3 objectives and these kinds of things. So then you meet the goals. All right, what are the next 3 goals? Right? So the phrase walking and chewing gum at the same time, get those 3 goals done. What are the next 3? Or maybe they change. There's some urgency. Maybe there's an issue and you're managing a health and safety issue that dominates the goals. So it's the goals are this fixed point in time. So it's, how can we make it worth something, I guess, is where my own opinion, seeing these things be more sort of a sterile, let's get the goals done, and they're done at the last minute. And a lot of times it's someone's individual peccadillo that they want to cure, and it gets thrown into a goal, and then oftentimes not cured anyway, not addressed anyway. I guess for me, I just want to make sure it matters. And that's why I want to share those thoughts, because we have 9 members here. You really got to sit back on the macro level and say, what are my goals here? What do I actually want to see accomplished? And there may be a time frame, may not be a time frame on it. So I just wanted to share that is to get a working definition and to make sure all 9 members can have a voice, and then from everyone together pick what actually makes sense, that's also able to be, from an administrative standpoint, that it's workable and it makes sense. We may have a goal that administration may say that makes no sense, and then they'll explain why, and then we get back to a different set of goals. So it would be wonderful if we can make it make sense, have a consistent working definition between all of us for this particular district in each of the schools. And it may tie to the strategic plans that have been going on as well. So they dovetail together. So those are some thoughts I have historically and how I think the process could be made solid and productive. Anybody else have any questions or comments or thoughts on that?
I would just add a little context, so we, in the industry, we often refer, and you probably may apply in other industries as well, is this idea of a SMART goal, right? So it's specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound, right? So those are typically the criteria that are used to define a goal. I think the most important one of those is measurable, right? Because it assigns a quantitative value to progress. And we do that often internally when we're looking at data. And we're actually setting a percentage when we're talking about individual student growth objectives for teachers or administrator goals. They oftentimes have sort of a quantitative measure where we're looking to move student achievement in a certain area up. We're looking to move disciplinary infractions down or bullying cases down. So that's one way where you can sort of make it more concrete. But you have to start with some measurement, some data set that you're looking at. You talked about the idea of a survey, so you may find if you decided you wanted to survey the community relative to, the board's performance, et cetera, you might find an indicator on that survey where it was areas where it was really high and an area where the responses were relatively low. And so you might target that specific um, uh, characteristic or quality and say, through our efforts this year, deliberate efforts, we're looking to re-administer that survey in a year and see positive movement in that particular aspect of the survey. Maybe it's, I'm just going to throw out the word, maybe it's transparency, maybe it's communication, whatever the case may be, that would be an example. But know for sure that at the August committee of the whole, we will bring forward, the administration will bring forward 2 draft goals. And so we do look forward to having an opportunity to discuss the goals publicly with you, getting some feedback from you to make sure that the goals we're setting internally are aligned with what your priorities are as a board. So at a bare minimum, if we did only that, that would be powerful as well. So
Thank you very much for that. I just wanted to go back up before we go down. Board retreat, did we talk enough? Did you have anything else on that? The board retreat concept, or do we?
So we're not really doing a retreat. We're doing a working session for goals at the cow.
that's right, but a possibility for a retreat as well, which would be
So,
more
Mr.
team
Lebechi-
building.
Mr. Lebechi and I had spoken at one point that it would be nice to get to know each other outside of this U-shaped table.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
we can't do that unless it's a board retreat because otherwise we can't all be together. Right? So that's, it was just more of, getting to know each other a little bit better than across the table.
So let's
Let's set something up.
Yeah, let's set something up, and the folks that can make it great, we can always set it up like a circular
I think
firing
team
squad.
building is a better word for it
Team
rather
building.
than
Yeah.
retreat. Retreat sounds like we're going on vacation.
Run
We're gonna
away,
hang
it'll
out.
be Monty Python.
We want to, the
Right.
point would be like Mr. Silla said, to get to know each other in a better way so we can be more effective on the board. And I think relationships are the first start of that. So I was happy to offer my home, my backyard as a place that we can meet and we can hang out for the day and chat with each other and, play some games or whatever it may be, have
Trust
some
falls.
food. And Trust Falls, yes, that's my favorite.
So we could just add your house as an additional insured with the Jets.
So what you would have to do is basically you would advertise a meeting where no formal action would be taken. So I don't know if you want to use your backyard with the advertisement in the paper or not. Maybe you do, I don't know. But whatever location you pick for the retreat or whatever you want to call it would be advertised as a meeting of the board where no official action would be taken. You just gather to discuss, frankly, whatever
Okay.
you want.
So
Oh, great,
I
thank you. Thank
officially
you.
withdraw my.
So no, thank you. So we're going to put that together and it's going to be great. So everyone try to attend. All right, so we're going to move into new business and what I'd like to do is flip 2 and 1. Number 1 is the review of agenda action items, and you may have gone through it all, but you may still be looking at a few items that you may have questions on. So what we'd like to do first is the central office department updates. We have curriculum instruction, we have special services, guidance, human resources and personnel, budget and finance and athletics. I don't see Mr. Casal here, so I could read the athletic item. So if
Yeah,
administration be so kind, if we can do the department items, and then we'll go back to review of any agenda items if you have any questions. So if we can start with curriculum and instruction. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you, President Wall. So it's been a busy start to the summer for our humanities and ESL departments. We've had on July 8th and 18th, 14 literacy teachers came in as well as math teachers came in for a curriculum writing symposium. These are full rewrites of both K-12 ELA and K-12 math. So the purpose of this symposium was to ensure that all the curriculum writers had a firm understanding of the new standards. They worked on developing common unit plan templates and ensured that there was effective articulation between grade levels before the curriculum writers then dispersed into their own devices. So those days went very well. Really proud to announce that the recent humanities AP scores, exceptional with the majority of courses exceeding both state and global averages. Notably, both the U.S. history and world history AP courses achieved remarkable results with 100% of the students scoring higher than a 3. So that's an outstanding achievement by our students and our staff. Again, we had a math curriculum writing symposium And we're seeing great movement and progress with our internships. Mr. Cohen has 20 students thus far verified for internships in various fields, including electrical contracting, education, cardiology, dermatology, et cetera. Our summer step-up program is occurring. We have approximately 100 students who are participating in that summer step-up program, which, if you recall, is funded out of ARP ESSER funding. And Mrs. Rubel and Miss Bennett do an outstanding job of coordinating that program. We're engaged in, I think that's it for curriculum instruction. We want to switch to special services.
Just a brief question. Are we
Yep.
going to still continue with, I remember the former acting assistant superintendent or director of curriculum of the in-school tuition, that, scratch that, the training, like for students during the day, that they can get extra help during the day.
Oh, it's like the learning lab?
Yeah, just drop right in because, one of the an extra tax I find out there are parents having to pay for so much tutoring that really just goes right. It's almost like an extra tax for them. And the fellow who was working here on an interim basis said, if you need tutoring, unless it's extra tutoring for a special reason, then we're not doing our job. So the notion was we were having in-school tutoring that children during the day, instead of having to suffer through it at night because they're cramming it for a test because they didn't quite pick up what they were supposed to pick up during the day, instead of paying $5,000-$10,000 a year for folks when you're paying property taxes, we had a program that was during the day
Yeah.
that they can drop in for extra tutoring or extra help, I thought. I just wonder if we
Yeah,
we're
I
gonna
mean,
kick that off in September too.
That's also an ARP ESSER funded program, as well as the homework help program that we offered Indian Hill. So, but we have to expend those funds by the ARP ESSER funds by September 1 of this school year. So the funding for both those programs will have dried up, unfortunately.
Are we able to prepay? So, I mean, I don't know how the funding works, but maybe it's a finance question. If it's a deadline, that's kind of silly that it dries up by September. Well, it makes no sense at all, actually. That's not a shocker. But
Yeah.
if we had additional funds that we pre-funded it to get into the next cycle.
I think you could probably answer. I don't think so, but Jess could probably answer that question.
Because it's salary related, it would have to be expended by that date. We wouldn't be able to expand it.
Are we going to lose funds by, have we expended it at all or no?
We will be expending
We will
everything
have
by
that.
the end. Yes.
Okay, all right,
Correct.
thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Casper.
I
You're
just have a couple questions.
Sure.
Or / comments. So first, I wanted to, as schedules and stuff are being made and worked on this summer, I want to just remind you to maybe follow up with the high school, because we had spoken about the extra help.
Yep.
And how a lot of like the main core, like math and English, were always on the same days, and kids would have to choose between. So somehow alternating, maybe however, like humanities versus the sciences or something, like, so that we can alternate so kids don't have to choose one over the other. And then so waiver, right? So here's I thought that the high school became an open waiver process.
That's right.
Okay, but yet they have to do still waiver work?
That's correct.
Was that always?
That
or
was.
new this
Yeah,
year?
no, that was in play. That was in play last year as well.
So do they have to have a certain, like if somebody, let's say was in regular math and had an 85 and they wanted to go into honors math next year, so it's not an open waiver?
So what it is that there's students who.
And I'm just talking just the high school
Yeah, yeah.
level. This is-
There's students who will automatically qualify for the honors course
Mhm.
based upon.
Their performance the previous year.
Exactly. And the criteria that's outlined within the program of studies. I mean, there are criteria. And that just basically determines which students are automatically enrolled. In other words, who are automatically eligible, and students who are essentially waivers, meaning that they're selecting a course for which they did not qualify by virtue of the
Right.
criteria. And if it's one of those students that's selecting the course, notwithstanding the fact that they haven't qualified by the criteria, they have to do the waiver work.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And Dr. Cascone, just to confirm, so the in-school tutoring program is ending September 1 that we had.
Last year will be was the last year that was.
Okay,
in
and if the
effect.
board is interested, not tonight, but
Yeah.
interested in that continuing, we would pick that up on the finance side or
Yeah.
some
It
other.
would be something that we'd have to consider within
Okay.
the operational budget.
All right, thank you.
For special services, I'll get started. Our extended school year started on July 8th. It's going great. The kids are amazing. Our staff is incredible. They're devoted, they're dedicated, they're there every day and happy to be there, as are our students. So we're very fortunate. We're already planning our end of the year culminating activity for ESY, so that's coming. But overall, it's been a great summer thus far. We're focused on hiring all of our tenure track positions and now shifting that focus over to our TLR positions. But overall, again, great success thus far. And then last week, Mr. Papalia and I were in an intense training with the Secret Service in Baltimore. We spent a week with them on behavior threat management. Spent time with CIA, FBI, you name it, every task force, the government. I felt like I was on a TV show, except it was a lot more intense. But we now are master trainers who are able to not just train our own staff, but also train the community and train our police officers and all of anyone that's really interested and comes in contact with our students. So we have a plan and to provide professional development throughout the year. Right. Awesome.
Thank you very much. Any questions from the board? Guidance?
Hey, good evening.
Good evening.
For guidance, Ms. Rizzatello and I, we're going to be coordinating an in-house HIB protocol training for all of the bullying specialists along with the assistant principals coming this summer, probably in August, that last week in August. I just recently finished the advanced certification training for bullying specialists that was given by Legal One. So I'm just going to turnkey that over to our staff. It's basically trying to align our goals, specifically our procedures, make sure all our procedures align. Although we actually do a pretty good job and with adhering to the law and the timelines, but just to make sure that everybody is doing the exact same thing in all four buildings, from the way cases are handled, the way that we're recording information, make sure that everything is put into PowerSchool and put into our software systems, especially for state reporting. So it's just kind of an alignment to make sure that everybody's on the same page with doing everything. And the high school counseling department hosting their annual senior college boot camp. That's on the 1st of August. This aligns with the Common App launch and allowing students and parents to sit in session and link their Naviance and Common App while counselors are present. Ms. Rizzatello in the packet put a image of the summer counselor schedule. And also honor roll and Club 5, those Club 5 of those people who scored a 5 on an AP test, they've been sent out to all the parents through School Messenger. That's everything with guidance. As far as HR, we just recently held a training on the Danielson evaluation model. Our administrators were there, the DIAC members, all the building level skip.
Mr. Howard, Mr. Howard, can you just acronym bust for us for the board, DIAC and SKIP?
SKIP is a school, good gravy.
Improvement plan, improvement panel.
Yeah, I was trying to figure out what was C for. School improvement panel. And DIAC is our district evaluation committee. We got all of them together, all the leaders from SKIP and from DIAC, along with the administrators, to go over the evaluation model. We're not completely changing the evaluation model. We've been using Danielson. We're just using a newer version of Danielson. And this is actually the first year I've been here for 2 decades. This is the first year that actually the administrators and the teachers were all trained at the same time. The teachers then are going to, the members of the building level SKIP teams are going to then turnkey that to the staff during that first week of September. And then in an effort to provide some extra time for the mandatory trainings that we do through Vector, this year, as opposed to opening it up like in September, we open it up in July, which gives staff, if they want, 2 months prior to school starting to do all the necessary training. It's still going to be, they still have to have it done by November 30th, but this gives them an extra, 60 days to do it. And then as we reported last month, we're still collaborating with Stonegate Associates to develop an all hazards emergency manual plan for the school district. Mr. Papalia has been taking pretty much the lion's share of the lead on getting that together. And I think we're all familiar with Stonegate. They did our security assessment, and they've been working with this district, I think, for the last four years. I think that's it. That's it for me in terms of human
Thank-
resources.
Thank you very much. Any board members have any questions or comments? Thank you very much. Budget and Finance?
Yeah, so a lot of the items that I listed under the budget and finance update are going to be on the agenda for the 31st for approval, which are really most of our standard yearly approval items. But what I wanted to put up to everybody's attention is I know a lot of the board members wanted an update on food service. For everybody that's listening, obviously, we made a couple of changes during the school year. We implemented Discovery Kitchen over at Village School and Indian Hill School, which gave the children opportunities to try different foods. We're also offering more healthier options for the middle school and the high school, but we are just in the middle of offering a new point of sale system, which we're really excited to start. It should make it a lot more user-friendly for the parents, setting parameters, limits for spending, and also for specific a la carte items. We've been working with the technology department as well as our food service director. We should have everything ready to rock and roll, and the parents should be getting their emails shortly. I'm anticipating maybe the first week in August so that they can log into the system, and we're going to see how everything goes for the first year. So that's my update.
Thank you very much. And I also
welcome.
believe, Dr. Clore, you're online. Did you have any comments or questions? I know we just referenced food service or any of the other items. Want to make sure that you're able to. Oh, okay. Great. So Mr. Casal's not here. I'm going to read the athletic update, just so you know. The 23-24 school year, remarkable success. Teams excelled on the field, but also demonstrated exemplary academic performance, community involvement. Here are some of the highlights. Boys soccer, Central Jersey Group 2 sectional champs. Girls tennis, Shore Conference sectional and group champs. Football, division champs. Boys basketball, division champs. Girls basketball, division champions. Boys swimming, sectional champions. Girls fencing, sectional champions. Boys lacrosse, sectional finalists. And girls track and field, divisional champions, as well as boys volleyball, divisional champions. Congratulations to all the boys and girls. Fantastic job. We're very, very proud of you. Also, individually, many of the players received all division and all shore accolades, with over 15 student athletes committing to compete at the collegiate level. Excellent work. So thank you very much for that. I just want to share that with the board. So now we're going to move on to the public meeting agenda. So Dr. Cascone, any highlights you want to share, or just open it up to the board under new business? This is the review of the agenda action items for the July meeting, and then we'll get on from this point. We'll have the conversation on cell phone policy discussions and then open it up to the public.
Thank you, Mr. Wall. The only thing I think is worth, from my perspective, calling attention to is the fact that you'll notice that we are approving a number of contracted services, successfully awarding of RFP proposals for architect services. We'll be renewing Spiesel. We will actually be asking the board to consider appointing a designated engineer firm, which is Collier's Engineer and Design. Asking for the board to consider approval of our audit services through PKF O'Connor Davies, as well as financial advisory services. This would be a new firm, Phoenix Advisors. So I just wanted to call attention to that in particular. If the board had any questions about those. Other than that, you're obviously in receipt of the agenda. We have a week until the next meeting. If you have any questions whatsoever, absolutely feel free to email me. Yep. Or at this time, if you had questions, of course.
Question on that real quick.
Yeah.
The RFPs
Yes, sir.
that we went over.
Mhm.
Was that all that? Were we gonna decide if we were making changes to some of these? Did I miss something?
Board, the business office, Jess, do you want to just share the date on which we shared the RFP applications with the board?
I would have to double check. I believe it was June 21st.
June 21st.
It was part of the agenda update, 10th item on the email.
So June 21st, basically in the wake of the conversation where we put a pause on, I think, all but the insurance providers.
That's correct.
Right. And so we forwarded the RFP applications to the board for review. We didn't receive any specific feedback on any of those things. There are a couple of time-sensitive tasks, for which we intend to engage a couple of these providers, namely the engineer and the financial advisor. So we felt it was prudent to make these recommendations, but certainly if there was a differing opinion from the board as opposed to these, yeah.
I'll just say two things. There's another week for if folks wanted to review even though the RFPs have been out for a month or whatever, when was it?
Where are the RFPs on?
June 21st.
June 21st. So over a month. There's another week to take a look at them. But by title, the purpose of auditing, we're familiar with auditing, of course. Engineering and the financial piece, as I mentioned in an email, engineering is to ensure that the dovetailing with municipal work, that the ingress and egress and road projects that front SATs in the high school, we ensure that it has the perspective of the schools involved in that project, and also internally by Rogi, if there's a cutout there to make it safe for the students crossing. As you know, there's a lot of intersections with athletes and cars and students and cars in that area to have a pull-off area. So that's what that's about. And instead of having a middle person, for example, in this case, there's Spezial separately, they did a very nice job. We moved from another firm to Spezial to finish the referendum work. So you see the designs and the work that was done by Spezial, but Spezial is subcontracting out an engineer, it makes no sense. So that's why having our own engineer. The financial services company is to calculate pilots. So instead of having a board member do calculations, let's have folks that are in that industry that provide calculations, whether it's Bellworks, whether it's tracking what future projections are, look at commercial real estate, look what's, the marketplace happening, what's happening, Vonage, Nokia, taking a look at all the pilots and look at the revenue deficits and just have actual black and white information. I ran through a number of the budgets to give some calculations, some rough cuts. But I think the thought process is, and the board is familiar with this, is to have reports from financial professionals cranking out the actual mathematics for the board's review. So we're dealing with very specific dollar amounts and how it impacts budget and finance group. So that's what that's for. But there is another week. There are firms listed here for appointment. If there's a change, whatever the majority of the board wishes to do. If you want to provide some more feedback, certainly send it to Dr. Cascone. Are there any other questions on that piece or the overall agenda?
Just one quick question.
With regard, I'm sorry, excuse me. With regards to the insurance RFPs, were we provided those? Because I didn't particularly see that. I know that there is, and I'm sure you guys are aware now that there's a 13% increase on the state plan for your health insurance program. And I'm just curious as to what Brown & Brown has provided with regards to potential options that might be in the marketplace. And if not, that we should probably consider taking a look before January 1st again, assuming they have not given us different options. Also, well, if that be the case, then we should probably be looking at some fresh set of eyes and within different companies that can potentially look at that for us.
Yes, so that the RFP, all the RFPs were actually included on that, inclusive of Brown and Brown
So,
for the.
yeah, I'm having trouble.
So it's
They're
under-
within the links of. the
Correct. So
first
the board,
28
the board mailing that went out June 21st, it's the 10th item under RFP documentation.
That
And it
makes
had,
sense.
yeah, it had the links. Everything was linked up, but
Says the
in
folder.
reference to your question, yes. So I've already been in contact with Brown and Brown. They're supposed to be going through the process at the end of this month. So probably by next week, we should be getting a letter from them. That's when they normally will go out to market to see if there are any other options with regards to health benefits.
Yeah, so I must be having an issue with my.
I can send it to the full board again today if everybody would like me
Yeah,
to
the
do that
link
as
is,
well.
it wasn't providing like anything. It just kind of gave a list of the people that were sent our.
No, if you,
requests
yeah,
for
if you click on
RFPs.
the link, it would
Yeah.
actually open up.
No, I know. It wasn't working last time I
Oh,
tried.
okay. Yeah,
this
so I'll
time,
send it to
so-
the full board tonight.
Yeah,
if
okay.
that's-
Thank you.
Thanks, Jim.
So
Yeah,
just a quick note on the
Sure.
audit services, PFK, has that been our? That's our,
EKF, we've been utilizing, I believe, since I've been here, I'd say for the last 4 years. And then the other firm was our previous auditor before we started using
so we
PKF.
used the one, then now we've been using this one
Correct.
for 4 years. Yeah, the audit services was one I thought we spoke about possibly switching that up just to get a different set of eyes on that. So it's not the same company auditing every year. I thought we threw that out there, but it sounds like that was a company 4 years ago. So just something to throw out there, whatever anybody else thinks.
And there's another 7 days to ponder that. And if there's an adjustment to the agenda, then we can adjust the agenda.
So
Yeah.
my other question outside the RPs is, I'm just curious what this role is, the peaceful school bus ambassador? Is that new?
So no, this is the Peaceful School Bus Ambassador is it's this person has dual role. So they're basic sense they're a bus aide, they're a bus monitor, but they also participate in delivering the bus assemblies, if you will. We, in the opening weeks of school, all of our younger students are trained, if you will, and they go through assemblies on proper bus conduct and things of that nature. So that's what this person is. They do assemblies with students, but they also actually ride buses. We don't have enough monitors where they're on every bus, but we use them sort of as on a needs based. If we have a bus that's demonstrating particular difficulties, we'll plug the ambassador into that bus, and it just becomes an adult that can monitor the conduct on the bus. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Any other questions during review of agenda items from the board on their new business? Okay, I have a brief item under new business, and we're going to get to cell phone policy. If the board members can contemplate whether or not you would be interested in being on a committee that would take a look at any potential namings of facilities, whether it be a sports field or other. After this meeting, let me know, because under our rules, we can appoint a committee of 4. So if folks are interested, let me know. So we'll have that committee set. There's been some conversations regarding SATs and some other infrastructure improvements, or it could be items that are currently built. As you may have seen previously, I thought it was entirely inappropriate to discuss actual names of folks, historical folks in this district, current history or, prior history. So that, to me, that's an offline conversation that I respect for all the families that folks have brought to us for these very important discussions. And so a committee would be appropriate. So if anyone's interested, just if you kindly let me know, and then we'll have that set up, and the committee can take that topic up regarding that item of naming facilities, whether it be sports fields or other entities. So I just want to put that out there. Thank you. Okay, so cell phone policy discussion has been talked about quite a bit. We have 9 members. We have 9 different opinions. But Dr. Cascone, can you kick off the conversation of perhaps where we are now, what kind of improvements we can do with our current program, and then we may want to go from there. I'll give one item that I'd referenced, which I'll just put it out there. Currently, from time to time, the children would be on Rogie on the track at gym, and just getting text neck. They're walking around. So from an optical standpoint, it's like it's asking for myopia, right? as in many different areas. It's from not being outside. It's not having that spatial. Dr. Kleur can speak to this. This is her field. But we have rules against that particular item, for example. So that's a classroom management issue. So I'm just putting that out there. There's certain things that should cease immediately, and the expectations going into the school year, and that's why we're verbalizing it now. Have Dr. Cascone speak, and then either administrative or board members give their input of what the expectations are on day one when school starts again, and what our rules are really mainly, and also staff ensuring that the rules are followed, as opposed to not ensuring that the rules are followed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wall. So I think what we've seen, and I think what led to this item being added to the agenda is this idea of premise of all out cell phone bans in schools. If you want to look at the Virginia governor's executive order, I think that it's sort of reaching a critical mass where I think people are realizing like we need to be more focused and deliberate in the way we approach this issue. I will tell you that our current approach is that K-8, pre-K through 8, the phones are not supposed to be out, period. They're supposed to be, whether it's in the locker or a backpack, off, out of sight. That's our current rule, if you will. I won't call it a policy. It's really a rule, a part of the code of conduct. Presently, we do not have that same approach at the high school. Students are given a little bit more freedom as far as that goes. So that's something that could potentially be discussed. We definitely, I think, did better last year because we did talk about this last year, and I think the administration really did focus on it more. So I think we improved this year insofar as cell phone usage in school. But there's still pockets where we can improve on that. I mean, my view as the superintendent is I think we need to make this a very explicit and deliberate focus as a school community, both parents, but particularly internally, to be making a concerted effort to do everything we can to ensure that we are enforcing our rules 100%. I can tell you that the middle school and high school administration have been working on revisions to the code of conduct, which would have more stringent penalties for cell phone possession and use. And obviously that would become progressive, confiscation, parents need to come to pick it up, parent conferences, things of that nature. We'll have those revised code of conduct for the board in August to review. So that would be my recommendation, is that the board sort of put the onus back on me as the superintendent and our staff to make sure that we are as close to 100% compliance and enforcement as possible. But I do think it's worth following these trends as they emerge. If there are districts that are passing policies, reviewing those policies, maybe engaging in informational interviews with those districts to understand what went into the policy, the rationale, and also seeing like how it works, right? How does an all-out ban work? Is it working? Are they seeing positive gains in discipline, in bullying, in attendance, whatever the case may be? That would be my recommendation. More deliberate focus by the school district with contemporaneous research on the possibility of more stringent measures.
I'd open it up to the board.
Thank you, Dr. Cascone. So I applaud the Governor Youngkin in Virginia. He signed that executive order banning cell phones in K through 12. I'm a big believer that the less the kids are on the phone at this age, the better they're going to be in so many different ways, especially mentally. And then also from a liability standpoint, we've seen some situations in New Jersey where kids are bullied in the school, cell phones are out, and some schools are facing some lawsuits now. And I feel if we didn't have a policy, if we don't have a policy, if we're not talking about it, we're not enforcing it, and something like that happens in our schools, then we're going to be held liable. And it's really a matter of when, not if we keep these kids on the phone. So I supported Dr. Cascone last year. I'll continue to support it. I think we should be as strict as possible. If we're not encouraging these kids to be off the phones, they're going to be glued to the phones. That's just what we know.
Any other board members?
Yeah,
Yes.
I think the policy as it stands now for especially K through 8 is a step in the right direction. But I mean, I think with my daughter being at Indian Hill, I think there was, you could see that there was inconsistent, enforcement there across seizures. So the consistency, I think, is going to be key no matter what
where we end up at any of the schools. But I also think that we can't minimize kind of the importance of just relationships and buildings. And I know even myself, and I think probably most of us, when we hear a buzz, it's like, gotta respond, so it's just like constant distraction. And I think taking that away, that distraction away, will just allow you to focus, allow kids to focus, teachers to teach, because it causes so much distraction for the teachers as well. I just think you take away that you don't feel so compelled to respond to a buzz if it's just not allowed to be there, but it's going to be communication and enforcement, I think, is going to be key no matter where, like I said, where we end up. And I think it's going to force kids to develop relationships and talk and get back to basics. Sounds so simple, but I think the phone has taken that away. I'd be curious to see too, like to what Chris said, for the HIB cases. I know I've only seen them for the past 6 months or so, right? But a lot of times they involve phones. I mean, most of the time. I'd be curious to see what that ratio is over some extended period of time, to see kind of where there is an involvement of cell phones.
Mr. Lecce?
Yeah, so thanks, Allison. I completely agree with what Ms. LaPresti said, but when would that data be available potentially? Where would we get it from, and who would we be able to pull it from, so we can? I'm sure that the data is going to trend in a positive direction for anybody who's banning the cell phones, but when can we actually just look at numbers and say, hey, wow, this is significant or not?
You mean for
The differences in banning cell phones, whatever measurable mark they want to choose to kind of study in that matter from what banning cell phones would have done.
Yeah, I mean, well, listen, I mean, obviously, anytime you're looking at data, having multiple years is always more reliable in terms of drawing conclusions. I mean, we definitely, I'll defer to Mr. Howard, but I do believe that within our own data, we can identify, what percentage of those were electronic. We'd have to take a deeper dive because some of them, I want to say many, but there are some that are electronic, but there is a good percentage of those where that conduct is happening outside of school hours or off school grounds. But if it's impacting the school day, we're obliged to investigate it as HIB. So, Mr. Howard, any insight you could give as to, like, could we drill down on that and get to some more specific numbers?
Yeah, Hipster already differentiates, the cause of the HIB. So if it's electronic, I think I put that in some of the reports that I've already done. And one of the things also I was talking about for what we're going to do with the counselors this summer is to make sure that we're all on the same page with the recording, because you can input that manually into Power School. So I want to try to get it in 2 spots to kind of correlate. So it shouldn't be any issue. We can go back as far as we were recording data in Hipster, which I think we have like 3 years of Hipster stuff. So if this is implemented and there's a dramatic drop, we'll be able to see what it was prior to coming up to now.
Mm-hmm.
But also outside of the data, there's no data that's going to show how less distracted the classrooms are. So, and that we already know that that's definitely going to be a decrease in distractions with the kids not pulling out the phones.
Yeah, I mean, like, you could probably surmise that from the lack of disruptions in the classroom in terms of conduct reports, because the teachers normally are really specific when they write down what they're doing and why they were removed out of the room. So we'd have to do a deeper dive into that, to the conduct report part, to see the difference no cell phones would make in terms of how it was in the past, but it's not something that's impossible.
And if the board were interested in a stricter policy, and that's a question for the board, what would the next steps be that are also operationally sound from an administrative standpoint? If the board just, they want stricter policies on this, they're looking at the science, they see the litigation, they know the risk, and they want to take the next step, what might that look like that is also operationally sound?
You want me to-
I got it.
Oh.
Yeah, thanks. No, that's good. So, I think it's safe to say, with our exercise last year with smartwatches, if you recall, the uproar, which eventually died down over smartwatches, is we can expect that, let's say hypothetically we were to impose a cell phone ban. I think we could expect that there would be a fair amount of pushback on that. So I think it's really important, and President Wall, you mentioned the idea of science. I think it's really important for the administration, if this is something the board wants to explore, is for us to do our homework, right? So that we are doing research, we are gathering the research. If there are case studies out there, there may very well be I do believe there are schools nationally who have already moved in this direction. What do those case studies show, right? To come to the table to back this policy with research and data, I think is critical, right? To show that we're using that data and that research to inform the decision making, because I do think that will mitigate the pushback, because ultimately we're coming from a place in what's in the best interest of the kids, and I think that's something the parents can identify with. But I think they, like students, like we all, have become very dependent upon it. Even psychologically, I think we saw that, parents were getting 504s, basically that they needed the modification to have their phone with them, and above and beyond really critical situations, they might be medical, or maybe there's a family crisis or something of that nature, an extenuating circumstance. So I think that's really important. I don't think that, I do think a ban is something that's worth exploring. But I think on the front end of that, it's really doing our research, because there may very well be data out there from certain school districts that have already done it to validate it.
That's kind of what I was asking is are there other school districts that we can ask for that information from, even in other states for that matter? Has another state done that a couple of years ago and they have a lot of data to show for it? And it's probably a big ask, but probably can figure it out.
We'd have to do the research, right? I mean, and that's the beauty of the internet, right? One of the great things about it is most of that research is public record. So we would engage in sort of like in a scholarly look, like a lit review almost. What is the research? What is the literature? What are the case studies?
I would say Google bleary-eyed children mindlessly scrolling at 1 a.m. and see how many pictures pop up.
I'm all for the data, but do we really need the data to make
And
this?
to know,
Listen, to Dr. Cascone's point though, yeah, you do need
It's
the
good to
data,
have
because there's
some-
going to be a lot of parents that are going to be pissed off about it, quite frankly. And the only way we can say, hey, it's just not because we thought it was good for your children. It's because we have things to back it up that show that it's good for your children and my children. So I think that's the only way
outside
you
of
can
a
really
possible
make an
medical-
argument to why we're doing
Sure.
something that who are we to say your cell phone's bad for you? We're
I
not
wonder how many
anyway.
parents are pissed off that we're not doing something.
I
So
agree,
I will
but
say.
we have to be able to combat both sides or
So-
educate both
That's
sides.
fair.
I've had, with this up on the agenda, I had a few parents reach out to me and talk about, it's my parental choice to buy that phone for my kid, and who are you to say that they can't? And I don't personally,
You could buy whatever
Like-
you want for your kid.
100%. So
You could
I'm
buy a
not
gun
saying
for your
that's my
kid.
personal,
Can't bring it to school though, right?
so it's not my personal.
I'm saying.
No, you can't do that, but, that's not my personal opinion. I don't really have a stance on it at this point because, the ban that's from, K to 8, my Indian Hill student doesn't have a phone, my middle schooler does. And, she doesn't use it unless it's in between something, or she's at her locker for something or whatever. She's not using it in class, but it's mainly for after school. And that's, so I don't know what I necessarily think about it. I do think that the high school should be allowed more freedom, because I think that most of the bullying or such is happening after school hours. I don't think it has anything to, it's not really in school, except perhaps when there's an incident in school that then gets recorded. But, that's, I think, few and far between.
Kim, a quick question based on that. If there's an HIB issue or other disciplinary issue, do we right now restrict phones from the individual who may have had a sustain? I mean, do we do that now? I think that's probably a good question. Maybe you're talking about how selective is it? Dr. Cascone, if someone is involved with an HIB and it's sustained, do we have a policy that you are no longer able to have this dopamine drip in your pocket?
It's a great question. I mean, I can tell you that I have not seen a sort of, and I wouldn't, it wouldn't necessarily be like a year-long ban. It could be. Sort of like, I'll use an example of like when we suspend students' bus privileges. That typically does not happen in the first offense. If there are multiple offenses, then there is typically a suspension from bus privileges. I have not seen that utilized as a consequence, but I like it. I think it's actually, and particularly if you've done it in school, if you've committed an infraction or an HIB in school with your device, I think actually that is
Like it almost gets like dropped off in the front office
yeah,
and then picked
for
up
a
at
period of
the
time,
end of the
right?
day.
Whether
Yeah.
it's 1 week, 2 weeks, a month. I like that
That
a lot.
goes
actually.
down to
Good
the more
suggestion.
stringent, like I know I've definitely talked about it being more stringent with like the demerit system, starting at SATs when there's these demerits that are going into effect, like certain number of demerits, you can't play a sport. Like, why isn't that put on the table? Because, and I think it's because most parents would be in an uproar, but then maybe parents would get in, help their kid get in line a little bit. Like, I think we need to be more stringent.
Speak
on-
consequences.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but
like-
what about
like
if you mess up, you run
consequences.
more at sports, I mean, instead of taking that away, you got to run for the whole practice. I don't know, something a little more positive reinforcement versus, taking something away from 'em. That's what I do to my kids.
But they can earn it back.
Well,
Like
I'm just-
that's
Well,
the
you
thing,
could
right?
do
Like
both
you,
sides, right?
what?
You could do both. You could do the negative reinforcement or the punishment demerit and also promote children that are doing the right thing and
Right.
look at that way.
Right,
But
it has to be a mixture of both, like there needs to be consequences. But, I mean, I think it's definitely, I definitely think this year was more stringent than last year. So I think we continue with that this year and do the research and see what, we come up with.
To me, it's not just about the bullying though. Do the kids need the phones for anything related to classroom activities? Is there one thing
No
in the
way.
school that the kids need the phone for?
I mean, there are some applications that run better on a handheld device than a Chromebook. There are some web-based, like a program like Kahoot, which you may have heard of, which is used to do surveys in class and formative assessment checks. It can be done on a Chromebook, but I personally don't see a lot of cell phone usage for instructional purposes in the classroom. In fact, I don't really see a lot of cell phones in the classroom. I would argue that we have cell phones in the classroom largely buttoned up. Kids understand the expectations, and I would argue, particularly K-8, we don't see them a lot. in the
So this
classrooms.
shouldn't be so shocking then if that's the case, right?
Yeah, I mean, really, they are essentially banned K-8. Like they're not supposed to be out or on. So
Right, but high school wise.
high school would be a.
But high school,
yeah.
they go into the phone pockets and I will say like definitely certain teachers are stricter than others. Like there was one teacher that every class counted the number of heads and then counted the number of pockets that were full.
That's,
And if they
that
didn't
should be just
match-
consistent and there you go.
Right, that's what
problem
I'm saying. So
solved.
like, so definitely making sure that everybody is following the same guidelines.
The same standard, right?
Would you believe we have students who actually brought burner phones, like bought like defunct,
Sure.
like old cell phones and would put an
I was
old
just gonna
cell
say
phone
that.
in the
What's
pocket.
stopping them from,
Well,
yeah, here's my
they
cell
do.
phone.
But see, that
Just
student
pick up
should
the
face a
case.
consequence.
Right, then that's code of conduct issue, right?
It is, but I mean, now you're
Yeah.
asking a teacher, like, that's a heavy lift for a teacher who's, got 25 kids and is about to teach a lesson to be like doing quality control on the phones that were dropped in the pockets.
Well, not
you know?
quality control, but if the student had pulled out a phone during class.
Oh, they pulled the phone out during class.
Listen,
yeah.
it's like, do what I say, not what I do. Like I'm in meetings and I'm distracted by my phone,
Mhm.
not for anything related to the meeting that I'm on, right? But it's just a distraction. That's what it is. And I know I've read articles.
Policy generally?
Yeah, it's basically, it's K-8, they're not supposed to be out or
Right, but
used.
in
And high
though.
school, they're not permitted in the instructional environment, in class.
What happens if they're caught with a phone being used?
You're testing me on the code
Just
of
curious,
conduct.
just-
I don't
no,
don't
that's
recall
fine.
exact, I know that that part of the code of conduct is being revised.
It-
But I don't know off the top of my head what the progressive discipline is for a cell phone.
It
So
depends
really, all
on-
we're talking about is the in-between time that high school students have, that they're not in instructional classes,
Like
that they can't
study
use.
hall.
Passing
lunch.
time, study hall, lunch.
It depends on
mean-
how many times it's been confiscated. Like if it's just one time, they'll hold it in the office. The kid has to come back and get it. But if it's a multiple kind of thing, then the parent would have to come in and pick it up.
See, I think ban is probably a strong word because we kind of already have it.
Yeah.
So it's really just more of consistent standards in terms of enforcement.
Correct. And just a note on high school, like, do we want to homogenize a ninth grade student with a senior, right? Like, should the same rules apply to all students? Because clearly seniors are typically more mature. They also have more responsibilities. They can vote.
Or more easily
they
distracted.
They can vote to fight for, they can serve in the armed forces, right? So I think that'd be something to consider as well do we want to treat a
Senior
ninth grade?
privilege.
Say again?
Senior privilege.
Possibility.
It's yours to lose.
I mean, right now, do you and the administration perceive there's a cell phone issue in the school? Is there a problem that's inhibiting learning?
I mean, it's not conspicuous, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's not, right? It's hard to ascertain or to measure the extent to which it is a distraction, the extent to which it is impacting student performance or student attention or student mental health. And that's why I think the research is really important because, these are sort of research questions that we're asking that may have already been answered, at least in some way, through other studies. And that's why I think that's really important. I wrote it down just to kind of engage in a research study on that, because I think that the more we read about the research and see what's happened in districts where it's happened, I think that's going to be really important, not only to build our own understanding, but also to educate our community as we continue to engage in the conversation. But I think in terms of, I mentioned to President Wall this evening when we were speaking, even though we ramped up on our enforcement last year, I didn't get out in front necessarily and say, look, this is a focus this year. We know these have negative impacts on kids, and honestly have some of that research that we gather over the summer and present that to teachers and say, this needs to be a deliberate focus, right? So the idea of like gym class, like that should not be happening. Like those kinds of conspicuous, violations should absolutely not be happening. Kids are always going to try and, figure it out. But in a case where we can control it, we should be controlling it. Bottom line.
I agree. This is rooted in research to find out, to compile research to not to defend what we're trying to do here, but I think we could all agree that what kind of time suck addiction these things could potentially be.
Mhm.
So maybe some kind of education for the kids, and as far as mental health is what it does to you. This is, it is addictive. If you can't go a couple of days without it, that right there speaks volumes of how reliant we are on these things. And it begins, as a kid. I mean, my kids have phones, and we try to do our best, but it's hard. All their friends have them. It's their, it's their way, so.
I was just gonna say, I've been reading a few articles over the past week or so, and I know one of the ones I read, a principal wrote it, and he said it was really, there was an uproar initially by, a good solid group of parents, but it was really communication with the parents, the communities, the staff and all of that about enforcement, right? And then you just stick to your guns, and he goes, it died down, and that was it. But I mean, we essentially kind of have a ban, right?
Yeah.
K-8 we do, but I think it's going to be standardizing the enforcement and having that like kind of graduating scale of, first infraction, second infraction. So I think ban is just a strong word. Maybe you don't even call it that. Is it that in and of itself is like intimidating? I can't even bring it to school. No,
an
you can bring it to
addendum.
school, just not into the classroom.
An addendum to the current rule that you can now not use it on this particular period as well, non-instructional.
Yeah, because I mean, the cafeteria, there is supervision in the cafeteria of sorts. There really is not a lot of supervision in the hallways. I mean, teachers are generally outside their classroom door, but that to me that's sort of like the time where there's the greatest chance of issues is because there isn't really supervision in the hallways in all places. There's a lot of nooks and crannies, bathrooms, et cetera. So.
It's almost like smoking, right? Like, but it's along the same lines. That's gone down, educating the kids to what this does to your brain could potentially help them mitigate or control themselves, right? Giving them the tools to.
It's a great point,
help
Jeff, but
themselves.
unlike smoking, we don't seem to be getting a whole lot of help
Yeah.
from anybody on this. There's no, I haven't seen a public service announcement or campaign for right. because they're users and consumers. It's the same reason why, Joe Camel and flavored, vape juice and things of that nature. They are actively marketing this to kids. They don't want kids to put the phones away.
Right.
So we're not getting help from other entities, governments or the government or otherwise. We have to go it on our own as a community. So
Well, thank you.
then,
Go ahead.
One of the other things that some of the parents said, and these are parents of like older kids, they're going back, and I'm just so that we have an idea as we get stricter, like they were going all the way back to the swatting. Do you remember when all the swatting was happening? And wanting to be able to communicate with their child. And like, that's why their kid has a device and brings it to school.
But the reality is, if anything went down,
Well-
you'd never get in touch with that person anyway.
I mean, no, yes,
God
you
forbid.
could, but you wouldn't want, in my opinion, right? You wouldn't want to, because you don't want to give away like,
Yeah.
you shouldn't be calling them and whatever. Right, because like you could hear, like they'll hear a ding or whatever, and now they're coming towards that noise.
won't.
So like, I'm just saying this was like,
The law enforcement actually said that
they don't.
is the worst thing you could possibly do.
I know, but I'm just telling you that this was that a couple parents said that, and I said, well, and having been to that and hearing what the officers had said, so I almost think like as part of it, kind of bringing back maybe some like, if we put something out, like reinforcing, like maybe we put in like a quote from the police department as to like, you don't want to have you don't want to be contacting them if something happens or whatever, because that was like two parents said that to me, and I'm like, no, you wouldn't want to do that. Like, you don't want to attract attention to your kid. So, that was all.
And if it's not like an emergency, that serious of an emergency, they can still have it in their locker or whatever and go to the bathroom or go to the office and use their phone. So it's not, you can still reach whoever you need to reach, I think, too. But-
Maybe just quickly, maybe some of that data, the group that gave us
Stonegate.
they gave a presentation, and they had a lot of data that was really, first of all, they told us how secure and how great we were doing without starting as a starting point for them. If you remember how amazing they said we were. They had a lot of data that was kind of reassuring, for example, with some sort of, shooter incident. They've never gone through a locked door, and, and kind of reinforcing the safety precautions we have in place. Maybe that's something that would help parents, kind of ease some of their tensions if they have them. Because I didn't know any of that stuff before.
I don't think we want to publicize a lot of that info, though.
That might make sense. Yeah.
So, well, to the positive.
But the data itself, like, again, it's not,
It was eye-opening.
it's never been through a lot, locked door type
And
thing and whatever.
I was going to say, good. Okay. I was going to say, as we close out the topic, the one thing I do know, since the history of this school being opened, there hasn't been this level of conversation about the topic ever. So that's great, because as they say, sunshine's the best disinfectant, and it's a bipartisan issue. The governor of California, not the bastion of conservatism, as an example, is calling for a ban on cell phones. So it's many different.
Bipartisan.
Right. It's many different sides of the aisle. Well, what's more sad and disappointing? The child that's isolated and buried in a cell phone when they're, 10 or 11 years old, or that same child 5 years earlier at Tatum Park in the swing calling for their mom or dad, and they're on their phone over in the corner, sitting down on the bench, doing the exact same thing and teaching that child that dopamine drip is exactly what you should do when they're trying to play with their mom or dad. I actually think that's a lot sadder, and that's the children are watching us. So defend the kids a little bit for every parent who's missing out on that beautiful event, that swing, that jump, that type of event that you're scrolling and you're just returning that message, and there's always something else clicking and the dopamine is hitting you too, and you're missing out on your little boy or girl swinging in that little swing set. That's pretty sad if you ask me.
Let's take
Yeah.
the parents' phones away too.
So for the folks that are listening, let the board know if you think right track, wrong track, how you feel. It's your community. Let us know what you think. I do know that St. John Vianney has an excellent cell phone policy. So we could take a look at some of the other. Well, I'll forward it over to you. I don't want to go over by rote, but that's the
They
feedback I
can't
got.
use it, and it's a $20 fine every time you use it, and they take it away, give it to the office, and to get it back, you have to pay $20. I don't
Candy
know.
Crush. I don't know. I don't know. But the point is, we're talking about it, and that's very good. And I would also back up the freshmen and sophomores that you can't quite tell who is more mature or less mature. So you're not going to be able to track that well. So any other
Just-
questions, Mr. Buckley?
Just a comment, I mean, I can appreciate the desire of a parent to want to understand the safety of their child, but we can't allow these low probability incidents or outlier incidents to dictate or undermine the mission, which is to educate kids. And if the kids are on the phones, and I'm guilty of it too, like my wife yells at me constantly because I'm always on the phone, whether it's work or Instagram, it's a distraction. So thank you.
So if you want to look up some additional research, awayfortheday.org, it's called awayfortheday.org. It's a site that you can take a look at and see if you, during your research, and take a look. But parents, really, if you're watching, and staff and folks that work here, if you have a thought or idea, you're in the middle of it, you're in the heart of it, let us know. And if there's something that's a refinement or improvement, then great, the board could take it up. The conversation was excellent. Thank you, everyone, for that. We are now at questions and comments for the public. I see we have a member of the public. You're welcome to come on up. We're good? Okay, since no other comments from the public, since there are no members of the public that are present, we do not have an executive session. So I'll open it up to the board. Are there any other items you wish to discuss, whether it be old business, new business, or general comments? And if, yes, sir.
Just curious, does the school start the day with the Pledge of Allegiance every day or no? They do? Okay. That came up in conversation this week and I said I didn't know, so.
One nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So far,
Okay.
yes.
Yeah, no, same beginning, same middle, and same ending. And if anybody's hearing anything different, let this board know. All right. So with that, when we have a motion to adjourn,
Move.
a second, all in favor, say aye. Opposed? Motion carried. We're now adjourned. Thank you to the IT staff. Appreciate everything. Have a great day.